Hi, I'm Tessa, a veteran educator working in the field of special education.
And I'm Kim, mom of two autistic boys and a late diagnosed autistic person myself.
And welcome to Totally Over the Spectrum, where we dive into embracing autism through understanding and support. Welcome to episode 12 as we discuss masking in autism. We're going to explore what it looks like and why people do it. And I'm going to start off with you because you are a master at masking.
Yeah, so I wanted to start off this particular topic by prefacing that I didn't get my diagnosis until I was 50, which is only last year. And I am very high masking. So unpacking that has been really stressful and really emotional. And the best sources of information that I found was listening to other autistic people talk about their personal experience with masking. So thank you to everyone out there who has put themselves out there and made themselves vulnerable so that I could learn from other people's personal experiences. I know that's a really tough thing to do and really appreciate it. So thank you for that. It helps. So the first thing I'm going to start with is a definition because I always like to start with definitions.
I think that's a great place to start because understanding what it is going to be able to provide people some relief and give those who are neurotypical a clear understanding of where you're coming from.
Yeah. So there is no clear definition for masking. Everybody sort of has a different there's sort of a general theme, but everybody kind of has a little bit of a different definition. So what I did was I picked and chose sort of what I really thought highlighted it and tried to give it the best definition that I could from a combination of sources. Does that make sense?
That does. And masking actually pays tribute to what autism is. It's a spectrum. So you're going to have a spectrum of masking. So it really complements exactly the diagnosis of a person with autism.
Right. So masking is going to be different for everybody, just like autism is different for everybody. So the definition I have is that it is a conscious or an unconscious coping strategy used to hide aspects of yourself in order to blend in or to avoid harm in society. And it is also sometimes called camouflaging.
That's correct. And I think the emphasis on that diagnosis is society, right? So a big part of this trait of needing to mask is the needing to fit into society and be accepted by society. And hopefully, as we explore this topic, I'm hoping people will find they have the tools to reduce that, their anxiety about that, and be more accepted in society.
Well, that's the dream.
That is, and I like to dream.
A certain degree of masking happens for most people, whether they're autistic or not. But there are some key differences on how and why autistic people mask.
Okay, and we both came up with our lists, and we often do this. In fact, we do this with every episode. We come prepared with our own approach on it, and everything that you hear and see is not, not rehearsed one bit whatsoever. So I'm going to let you start it off, and we'll see, if we have the similarities, and if there's any differences, then we'll discuss those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good for people to know that we don't actually know what the other person. This is an authentic conversation. We don't know what the other person's actually going to say. So I have some excerpts from the National Autistic Society, which is UK based, and their research suggests that autistic people learn how to mask by observing, analyzing, and mirroring the behavior of others. And that can be in real life, TV, films, books, whatever. So let's start with some examples of masking, which again can be consciously or unconsciously done.
Okay, and I've come from the approach of simply psychology, right? So I've approached it from that aspect of it.
Examples of masking. First one I have is using facial expressions, maybe by mirroring others, that wouldn't come naturally to you.
Yes, I have that on my list as well. And so give us some examples on what that would, sound like or look like if you're so inclined to do so.
I actually wrote out all my list of ways that I mask, and it was sort of a good exercise for me as well, right?
Yeah, because
it's difficult. It's a difficult thing to unpack.
It is, and you're an expert at it, so.
For good or for bad. I would often force my face to be smiling to some degree to stop people asking what's wrong, right? If you get asked what's wrong all the time, you're going to find a way to make that not happen. So if you just walk around with a little bit of a sort of cheerful expression, no matter how you're feeling, then people stop asking. And, I don't know, I guess my resting face is apparently not terribly friendly looking. I don't know. But people would often think I was angry at them, even when I wasn't angry. And really recently, I had somebody ask me why I was sad. I said, well, why do you look so sad? And I instantly fixed my face as soon as they said it. And I thought about it. And the reason that my face was looking that way was that I was extremely tired. So I wasn't masking. I wasn't thinking about it. I was just really tired and thinking about something else. And they had to stop and point out that, hey, you look really sad. And so I instantly fix my face so that doesn't happen.
So my question to you is, why did you do that instead of provide them an explanation to say, actually, I'm really tired?
Oh, I did. But people don't accept that explanation. So I was actually away somewhere. And I was with someone, and we were leaving that place. And so this person says to me, oh, you look really sad. And I said, oh, actually, I'm just really tired. And I immediately fixed my face. I said, I'm just really tired. And he looks at me and says, oh, you're just sad that you're leaving. And I said, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
So
That's interesting.
Yeah, that it happens a lot, that people do not take what you're saying as being true because they already have this preconceived notion that what they saw is true.
Okay.
So they're just going to justify it. And rather than, I'm not going to have some in-depth conversation with some stranger about this, right? I'm just going to say the easiest thing to do is just agree with them and move on.
Which actually then kind of ties into one of my highlights that I had got is that you often hide your interests and your topics or emotions in order to appease other people.
Yeah, I did get that one as well. Like not sharing interests due to a concern that they may be perceived as inappropriate or unusual, for example, because of a person's age. And that's totally something that I do.
Okay.
I will not, I will generally wait to see what the other person is interested in and then talk about that or something related to that. But I won't talk about my interests if I'm not sure that they're going to find it interesting or if I think that they might judge me harshly because of it.
Okay, so hiding those special interests and is a huge part of a person masking, right? Is that fear of rejection.
Criticism and discrimination and all of those things, yeah.
Okay, all right. So it's funny that a facial expression can lead and connect to, another aspect of such a huge, important part of who you are, and you're masking that as well. All right.
Another component is forcing yourself to make eye contact or monitoring how much eye contact you're making.
Yeah, that is a big piece as an educator. I always, hear people saying, oh, look at me. When I'm talking to you, look at me. That is the norm for, neurotypical people, is that we like to engage in conversation and make eye contact to give that person that we're speaking with assurance that we are focused on what they're saying. But I'd like people to take away from this point is it is overwhelming for a person with autism to make eye contact with you as well as listen to you. It is overwhelming. So instead of saying, look at me to gain, confirmation of what you're saying, just ask for them to repeat what you ended with, or part of a conversation. Ask them what they took away from what you just said to gain confirmation on that. Please don't ask somebody to constantly make that eye contact with you, because it is exhausting for them.
And if you're doing it, sometimes you're not actually paying attention to what that person's saying, because you're so overwhelmed that you can't take the information in. It's like, I can do one or the other, but I cannot do both. So if it is more important to you for me to look at you, don't expect me to retain anything that you're saying.
Yeah.
But that said, I got really good at faking it. So I can look at somebody, and then if you're having a drink or a meal, you can look down at your food or look at your drink and then look back. And people also think that when you're talking and you look away, like you're thinking, and then you look back again, they're okay with that. But when they're speaking, they really want a lot of eye contact.
Yes.
So to look down at your drink and back up is okay. To look away at something else altogether is not. So you sort of find those areas where it's accepted and where it isn't. I cannot hold eye contact and talk about emotionally charged subjects. No go. Can't do it. Physically can't do it. Impossible.
Okay. Why is that? Why do you think that?
There's too much going on. Being able to regulate your emotions, talking about something very emotional, which is also difficult to talk about, and make eye contact, there's too much going on in that scenario.
So it becomes a sensory overload for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the one thing I'd like people to take away from that is, please don't be offended by that, right? It is not done intentionally. It is not done to be disrespectful. It is done from a sense of being able to provide the other person, the respect by listening to what they're saying. You listen with your ears. You don't listen with your eyes. So, please just be respectful. If somebody is unable to give you that eye contact, just listen to, and trust me, when I know the kids that I work with are listening intently is when I ask a question and they're able to accurately answer the question.
Yeah, if you want feedback and you want a response, you have to sort of eliminate some of those sensory issues that are happening, and eye contact may be one of them.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you have?
That was on my list too. Eye contact was actually the number one on my list. So the next one on my list was hiding your stimming.
Yeah, I have that one too.
So that I find is a big masking over there. And I think it leads to a lot of people just being exhausted by the end of the day from having to enforce such levels of control over their stimming, that when at the end of the day it's exhausted. Or a lot of times I find that kids that I've worked with in the past that have controlled a lot of their stimming while they were at school in order to be able to function, to meet their academic needs or to meet their social needs, that when they get home, they go into an excessive amount of stimming to get it out of their system.
People have to remember that stimming is self-regulation. So you are not being allowed to regulate yourself in public because of discrimination or bullying or all of the negative, things that people are going to do because they don't understand what's going on.
Yeah. So one of the strategies I use for the kids that I work with is like, I know you need to do this, but, and I'm talking about more of your level 1, maybe possibly your level 2 students, is like, but you feel embarrassed to do this out in society. So what I often say is, let's find a strategy where this is something that you can use no matter where you go. And that way it gives you the opportunity to release that instead of bottling that and becoming like a pressure cooker. So excuse yourself from what you're doing. Go to a place maybe where you have a lot of privacy, like go to the washroom if needs be. Take a few moments to allow yourself to release that stimming and then re-engage in what you're doing.
Yeah, or you find stims that are socially acceptable, like playing with your pen or something like that, right? I was teased for stimming. Lots of people are teased for stimming because it looks weird, right? Because people aren't doing it typically. I have suppressed them. I don't know what they would be now. Part of learning about masking is also learning about unmasking, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It's really, I remember one, and I sort of tried to do that when I was home alone, and there was no one around to judge me, and it just felt so forced because I'm just not used to doing it. And you receive such negative feedback for it that it just feels like it was a wrong thing to do.
It now becomes as associated with a traumatic experience, right?
Yeah. Also, echolalia can happen internally, and I didn't know that. So instead of repeating something out loud, you repeat it in your head. So when people are talking, sometimes I really associate what they're talking about with like a song lyric or something, and then that will play in my head in the background rather than out loud. So what I've sort of been doing now at home is saying things out loud that I would normally just say in my head as sort of a gentle way to allow myself to do that in what I know to be a safe space.
Okay.
It's a process. It's not easy.
No, it's not. All right, what's on yours? Next one.
Changing your speech or tone of voice. So you might use less direct phrasing or be more or less animated when you speak.
Yeah, I have that too. It's, being overly aware of what other people are doing in order to try and match that so that you're not coming across as being odd or different or
right.
not
So,
socially accepted.
So that I have down as mirroring, which is a little bit different. This is more, I can be really blunt and really matter of fact. And became very apparent to me when I was younger that people didn't just want information, which I really couldn't understand because all I really wanted was information. So you learn very quickly that if you say things in a different way, your word choice, you sort of really particular about what words you use and how you use them and how you say them so that people are not so offended by what you have to say. Right? It's more of that. And then for your facial affect, I was not animated when I spoke when I was younger.
Okay.
So you be blunt and then you're sort of deadpan face and it's odd.
Yeah, and people didn't know how to react to that.
They don't because they can't read you because they don't know what's going on. When my youngest son Peter was 2, so he's level 3 non-speaking, he was at the speech and language pathologist, and she encouraged me to increase my affect, which is your face and your vocal output, right? To help engage him. And I had to force myself to do that to engage with him more. So instead of saying, "Oh, job well done," you're like, "Job well done," like you get into it. So as I had to do that for him, it became more habitual that I noticed that works for other people too. And then you sort of build in when you're speaking with people.
Okay. So now it's you've built it to such an extent, it's now second nature to you. It's muscle memory to you.
Unless I'm tired, in which everything just stops.
Okay.
Or I get really confused about something that was just said. So if someone presents me with information and I didn't understand it, then my mind explodes into trying to understand it and I forget to mask. And I immediately everything drops.
Which then allows your authentic self to come through.
But then people can't read it. They're like, "Oh no, are you upset or is there something?" And sometimes the pursuit of that information that I need in order to understand, everything goes out the window and all of a sudden I'm blunt and I can't stop trying to get to the point so that I can understand it. Does that make sense?
It does. It totally makes sense. Yeah. And it becomes a bit of a vicious circle. Yes. Because now you're losing a part of your authentic self in order to be able to articulate a message or the information that you need the other person to hear. So I do apologize for that. So, all right. My next one is that masking often takes, you often start to make social scripts and prepare before going into a social setting. Do you do that in a physical manner or do you do that mentally?
Both, I think. Most of it happens mentally, but I will sometimes sort of mutter things under my breath to myself. I notice my oldest son, Alex, who's level 1, he does this a lot. You can hear him sort of muttering to himself quite a bit when he's on his own, because it's a safe place to do that. He can just do that. Like, no one is ever going to tell him not to do that at home. I do this all the time. This is a constant. I try very hard to prepare for conversations, and then I imagine the possible responses so that I can be prepared, because I am not quick in the moment because there's so much else going on, right? My processing speed is not as fast as I might like it to be, because it almost feels like I feel like I'm stupid if I don't have a response to what's going on. So I try really hard to imagine, if I say this, what might this person say? And you go back on all the conversations you've had in case you might have something to pull from there that might work. And again, you might find this on TV, right? I personally I don't watch a lot of TV, but I don't find that it's so contrived when it never feels authentic on TV to me. So I do most of my scripting comes from people that I know that I think are socially adept. So I'll imagine, oh, I wonder what Tessa might say in this situation, because you're very outgoing and you're very friendly with people, and it's really easy for you to have a conversation with someone you don't know, or at least it appears to be. So I might think to myself, what have I seen you do in other situations to break the ice with someone? And I will file it, and then I will pull it out.
So you place a lot of cognitive load on yourself.
It's exhausting. It is exhausting.
It is. And then you add the processing time delay to that. You often see people with autism exhausted at the end of the day when they are in a social setting. And these are the reasons why.
One of the most difficult parts of this podcast is I don't know what you're going to say because we haven't practiced it.
No. But that's the best part of this podcast, Kim.
I like that it's authentic. I like that part of it. But sometimes you'll say something to me and this is scripted for me, right? Like, I have all the notes of all the things that I want to say because I need to have it in order, and I need to not forget any of the things that I want to say, because I'm going to go away from this and I'm going to think about it, and I'm going to think, oh, I really wanted to say this part, but I didn't. It didn't flow with the conversation, and I don't always know where to interject. So sometimes you'll say something and I'm thinking about the next thing that I want to say, and I'll just be like, yeah, and then go to it because I can't think of how to respond to you in the moment. So if people go back and watch some of these or listen to some of these, they will see that happening. And it's not that I'm disagreeing with you or not interested in what you're saying. It's that I just don't have a prepared response.
Yep. And plus you need to get through your list.
I want to go through my list.
Absolutely. And then there's me. I have my lists over there and I go, hey, let's do this. Let's fly by the seat of our pants, because when you work in the field of special education, I can come with my entire day mapped out. And as soon as I see my student arrive, I go, oh dear God, there goes that plan. Let's see what needs to be done, because my student is A, B, C, D, and E today. So for me, I'm in a constant state of 10 steps ahead, of planning 10 steps ahead based on how my student is that day.
You are able to pivot in the moment. You are able to look, assess, pivot, and reorganize your day. That's a lot. That is a lot going on there.
It is a lot going on there. And trust me, as much as I am high energy and I am a social butterfly and I can talk to anybody, anywhere, on anything, there are days when I come home and I go, oh dear God, I just need a cup of tea and nobody talk to me.
I have that every day.
Okay.
That I go out. It's like, let's have a cup of tea and nobody talk to me right now.
Okay. Well, see, at least there's some commonalities between neurotypical and neurodiverse, but the question is, what the hell am I?
Well, let's get you a diagnosis at some point. Let's get you an assessment at some point and see if there's something going on. The next one I have is asking more questions than you may be comfortable with or interested in. So small talk can be really, really boring. And it's really hard for me to engage my brain in something that is boring. So having a conversation with someone I don't know well can be excruciating. If they are an extrovert, they will carry the conversation. If they are an introvert, or they're a bit shy, or they're a bit unsure, they're just not, then we might as well just walk in different directions, because I don't know how to start it up. I don't know how to keep making it going. It just becomes awkward, and we should just both tap out and say, yeah, that was okay.
So that comment tells me that you would be more apt to gravitate towards a person who's an extrovert.
100%.
Such as myself.
Yes.
Okay.
They make life so much easier.
Okay.
Because they fill in all the blanks, and they require you to be present, but they don't require you to always be talking. Otherwise, you'd be talking over each other a lot.
Yep.
Right? So that is an easy relationship to have.
Okay. Well,
and that's not to say I don't have introverted friends. I do. But with an introvert like me, we can sit together and not talk, and it's not uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? It's usually with a stranger or someone I don't know very well, and you have that social awkwardness where you're expected to be making conversation and we're not.
Okay. So from, a social butterfly over here, and I'm okay when I can sit with somebody and be in total peace and quiet with them, but you don't understand how amazing of a gift that is, to be able to sit across from somebody and be in total harmony and in sync with that person without saying a single word. So you might look at it and going, oh, well, that's just the norm. But for neurotypical people, a lot of mindfulness is placed onto that to be able to achieve that goal. So
that's interesting.
That is your, like your superpower there.
This might also happen with talking with an extrovert. They might be talking about a subject that I find I'm not interested in history. So unless they are animated enough and passionate enough about talking about it, that they can make that sort of interesting for me, because mostly I'm not interested in the topic. I'm just interested in watching them and how they're reacting to it and the pleasure that they're getting out of it. But I have zero interest in history. It's just not. No, there are bits and pieces of interesting facts out there that are really weird, but generally I find history really boring.
Okay. No history conversations for us.
I mean, unless it's something really interesting that happened in history.
Okay. What's on your list?
Let me see. So mirroring, we sort of touched on mirroring before.
Yes.
Mirroring dress sense and other elements of appearance as well. So mirroring can also be about your body language. Like if you're sitting across from someone and they sort of have their hands folded on the table, and you sort of sit forward and put your hands the same way on the table, people tend to find that really relaxing. And I didn't know that I did that until I started hearing other people talking about it and reading about it. And then I became aware of it, and I noticed that I do it.
Okay.
I just automatically do it.
Yeah, that's on my top 3, is that I find that people with autism will generally mirror you, right? So often when I'm working with Peter and, he mirrors me to the T sometimes, and I go, oh dear God, I got to stop doing that. That does not look attractive, right? Thanks for pointing that out. So
I put a lot of emphasis on mirroring dress and appearance to some degree when I was younger, because that need to fit in was higher for me when I was younger. Now I just need to be comfortable, and I don't care so much unless we're going to like a social event or something, and then I have to Google what do people wear here, or I ask you a lot, what should I be wearing to this occasion, because this is new for me, and I don't want to stand out mostly.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I don't have a lot of interest in clothes. I need things to just be really comfortable.
Okay. Well, this is funny because Alex is the total contradiction to that. I, God love him. He's all about comfort, and whether it is a Vogue statement unto itself, he's got that one down pat.
I'm really glad that Alex doesn't have the anxiety that I have. There were times where I've said to him, "Oh, is that what you've chosen to wear to school today?" And he says, "Yes." And I said, "Oh, okay. Are you aware that this might not be something that is typical right now? Like that other, you're going to stand out a little bit. Are you okay with that? That kind of like not to make him anxious about it, but just to make him aware of it." And he says, "Mom, no one cares what I'm wearing. Everybody's walking around thinking about their own things and what they've got going on. No one cares what I wear." I said, "Power to you. Off you go."
Yep. Yeah. And when our recent outing with both your boys, that was quite the low-key bought to go,
Yeah.
to a conservation and hiking.
But he was happy about it.
Totally.
And that's all that matters.
And it gave me so much joy watching him parade himself through nature dressed like Woody.
Woody from Toy Story.
Toy Story, but
in really bright colors.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it.
And he loved it.
Totally.
And he is the first person to pose for a photograph.
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely.
So I think a lot of it comes from having anxiety and having a lot of negative experiences.
And I think a lot of the traits that we're discussing right now stems from an anxiety perspective, right? The anxiety of needing to feel that you are part of society, to be accepted by part of society. And that is really sad.
I didn't even know I had anxiety. If someone had asked me, I said, "No, I don't feel particularly anxious," because it's normal for me. And until I got my diagnosis and I started looking into these things, and especially masking, I didn't know. I had no idea.
Yeah. So, to those of you who have done a superior job on masking, my hat's off to you, and my profound apologies for you for having to do this in order to feel safe and fit into society.
So that brings us to the next topic: is why do autistic people mask? And yeah, acceptance to make and maintain relationships, right? That's one of the main ones, to blend in or just not to stand out, to meet societal expectations, to avoid social rejection, prejudice, bullying, discrimination. And we talked a lot about that in our previous episode, sexuality and gender identity.
Yeah.
We also do it to hide distress. So if you're in an environment that's causing sensory discomfort, but you don't want to inconvenience anyone or be told that you're overreacting or you're being dramatic, like you walk into a room and you say, "Wow, those lights that's a lot." And people, "Why are you saying that? It's not too bright to me. Like, you're just being really sensitive. Why do you have to complain about these things all the time?" Because it's painful.
Right to you, yeah.
Right? And people can't identify with it, and if they don't understand it, they jump to the assumption that you're just making more of it than what there is.
Yeah, you're being dramatic about it.
Right? Also a mask to increase our ability to find and keep a job. So the last Stats Canada survey was in 2017. Come on, Stats Can, do a better job. 67% of autistic people are unemployed in Canada. It's high.
It is high, very, very high. And, those are sad statistics. And I think that's going to be a totally different podcast on, provoking some changes over here in regards to our education process and our employment process. But that is a topic that needs to be discussed in a little bit more detail, and providing a lot more information on that. But those are really sad statistics.
They don't even have a number for underemployed, which is also really common.
Yeah.
And the last thing I have is that masking may become subconscious over time.
Yeah, it is.
It's knee-jerk reaction because it's become survival mode.
And you are the picture child, poster child for that, for masking. So, right up until when I first met you, and I was like, wow, here is a neurotypical person, right? A little bit quirky, but neurotypical, but look who's talking.
I could have just been mirroring you. Just reflecting your quirkiness back at you. That happens.
Yep, absolutely.
I wouldn't know.
But that's sad, because you're losing your authentic self. And much like, the story you've often told me about Alex and going to gym, right? He felt like he was losing his identity in it, right? So, what can be done about this? That's the bigger question.
The first thing I want to talk about, because I have to do it in order.
Yes.
Is how common is it? Right? We've sort of touched on this, but I think it's important to really talk about how common masking is in autistic people. And the first thing is there isn't really any good information out there regarding numbers.
There is no data on it because you guys do it out of necessity.
And it's difficult to measure, and it's different at different stages of life and in different situations. So there's a lot of variables surrounding it. Like I said, I wasn't diagnosed until I was 50, and trying to understand masking for myself has been a challenge because so much of it now is just completely routine. Mm-hmm. And again, I really rely on identifying with other autistic people's experiences. So I think that's really important. Generally, masking is more likely, although not exclusive, to autistic women, people of color, and genderqueer people. That's not to say, autistic white men don't mask, but this is just where they have found that there is a higher probability that people are masking.
Okay.
And to me, that screams safety.
It does. You just took the words right out of my mouth, and I just said, this to me says, okay, I'm going to do everything I can possibly do to ensure my safety and my well-being in society.
Yeah. So there is no clinical assessment tool for determining masking, but I did find a research questionnaire.
Okay.
It's called the Camouflaging Autistic Traits Questionnaire, the CATQ, and it was created by Laura Hull in 2019. So this questionnaire looks at how the autistic person perceives themselves and not how other people perceive them, which is great because that is not the trend in autistic literature.
And to me, by just saying that, it goes, wow, what a great tool for self-discovery.
Yeah.
Okay.
I find that really validating. So I did do the CATQ. Of course I did. Of course I had to try it. I am the highest level of masking according to their questionnaire that you can have. Sure. I aced it is what I did.
Okay.
It looked at over 350 autistic people and over 470 neurotypical people, which I think is a really good base. That's pretty good numbers.
Yep, absolutely.
I will also put a link in the description if anybody out there would like to look at this and do this for themselves or pass that information along to somebody else who might like it or benefit from it. So how do you know? How do you know if you're masking autism? Right? They have the questionnaire, but some people still have a really difficult time getting a diagnosis, right? Like the cost, the wait lists, and then masking can add another layer of difficulty in getting a really good assessment. If you mask really well, you're not perceived as having autistic traits.
Yes.
Right? Or people will say you're not autistic at all. Like I've had that, where people will go, well, no, you're not. It's like, well, I got diagnosis now, thanks. So that can lead to a misdiagnosis or a delay in getting diagnosed, right? Like the assessor has to be familiar with masking in order to be able to give you a really good assessment.
Now, can we, since we're talking about assessments, I think it would be, great for us to be able to possibly put a link onto there for assessment tools or assessment, how to go about gaining an assessment.
We have all of that information on our website, and we did talk about that in a previous episode. Let me find it.
We did talk about it.
Episode 6, the autism diagnosis.
We did. But maybe we can put it onto this link, into this podcast, so that people can, make it easier for people to be able to obtain that information.
Sounds good. I will do that.
Okay.
It's really important to be completely honest with your answers when you're doing your assessment and not answer in the way you think you're supposed to.
I think that's going to be the most difficult part of this assessment.
I think the questionnaire is really helpful in getting you to really think about what's going on internally. Like, it can't diagnose you, obviously, but just to get you to stop and think. Because some of those questions really made me stop and think, oh, yeah, I didn't see that. And again, listening to other autistic people's experiences, very eye-opening and very validating. Next part of this that I think this is kind of, I found this part super interesting, and that's the consequences of masking.
Okay.
Most people felt that masking had a negative impact on them.
Absolutely, because you're suppressing. There's only so much that you can suppress over time, right? Before it builds up and it's going to manifest into, we don't know how it's going to manifest and what it's going to come out as. So yeah, I completely do believe that.
It's mentally exhausting. It's physically exhausting. You feel anxious, depressed, low self-esteem. You feel like no one knows the real you. And there's still it's a lot of suicidal thoughts that happen in the autistic community as well. Imagine constantly suppressing your needs and your discomfort.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a big toll on your system.
It can lead to abusive situations because you don't speak up for yourself and you're prone to pleasing others at your own expense.
Yep. Makes you a more vulnerable person.
Yeah. It can lead to meltdowns, shutdowns, and burnout.
Absolutely.
I've found a few strategies to sort of mitigate the negative effects of masking. One was getting an official diagnosis. So, again, talk about this in episode 6, getting a diagnosis, but it can be, for me, it was very self-validating, right? I know a lot of people don't need to go and get a formal assessment done. They're very comfortable with having a self-diagnosis. And for me, it wasn't enough. For me, I wanted to be able to say, no, this is official. It's like proof. And I would always doubt myself and say, well, I really think I am, and everything points to me being autistic, but I can't officially diagnose. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I would have that circle of thought all the time. So for me, it was really, really important to just go and get an official diagnosis. That doesn't mean that it's really, really important for everybody. If you are good with a self-diagnosis, that is valid. That is valid for people.
Yep.
Diagnosis also helps other people in your life accept and understand your needs.
Yeah, that's a big, I think a lot of neurotypical people always look for the reason why. And once you get that reason why, I think it's pretty good for people to be more accepting of it. I don't know why that's necessary, having an official diagnosis. I think people should just be accepting, period.
Sometimes people, especially when you're good at masking, people have this perceived idea of who you are, and you come out and you say, oh, hey, I'm autistic. And they're like, well, I've never seen that. That feels like a lie. Mm-hmm. So if you say, well, actually, I went to a professional and they said yes, then they are more accepting of, oh, okay, that makes sense. I don't know why I have to prove it to people. I shouldn't have to prove it to people, but it makes me feel good to be able to say, no, I'm a card-carrying member, yeah. Hey, this is for real. And you can say what you want, but I feel this is 100% true now. And I needed it to be 100%.
Okay.
Some of the other consequences, strategies to mitigate. Sorry, we got talking and then I lost my track. To mitigate the negative effects of masking. Connect with the autistic community. So spending time with other autistic people can help you understand yourself. Like I said, I watched a lot of videos and listened to people talk about masking and how it affected them. And that helped me a lot.
Yeah. And I think the other aspect of it is giving yourself permission to be who you are.
Oh, that's so hard though. Like that's good. That's a lot of unpacking to do. It sounds like a very simple statement to say, but that's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work to get, to become the holistic the whole part of it. But by starting with an affirmation to say, I give myself permission, is putting yourself in that mindset to say, it's okay. And I think just that little bit of a start, giving yourself that little bit of permission to do so, I think would help, relieve some of that tension and that stress in order for you to take that next step.
You're absolutely right. And it is a good place to start, and it will not be easy, and it's going to feel all sorts of things when you first start, but over time you'll start to believe that.
Yeah. It kind of brings a show to mind of Naked and Alone, kind of, and Afraid and Alone kind of thing, is when, you start that unpacking process. I'm sure it will feel pretty much along those lines.
I'm not familiar with it, so I don't know what that is.
Okay, I kind of connect things that are
no, I like
really
it.
odd.
I just don't know that one. Sharing experiences can be very therapeutic. Everyone is welcome to join us on our Facebook chat, which is totally over the spectrum autism discussion group. And we will, we'd like to talk about things there. The last one I have is to give yourself time to recover. So if you've been masking at school or work or during socializing, give yourself time to decompress when you are home and you are in a safe space. And even build it into your schedule if you possibly can. Because like we've been saying throughout this whole thing, this is exhausting. Really, really exhausting.
Yeah, it is. I think you also brought up a good point just a few moments ago about burnouts and shutdowns. So do you want us to give us a little bit more information on that?
First, I want to talk about the benefits.
Okay, all right, let's do this.
Because this was really interesting to me because there are a lot of negative consequences for masking, but there are reasons that we do it that are still beneficial, which is why we do it.
Okay,
right?
Let's do that. I love to explore anything that's positive.
Right, and I want to talk about both sides of this because I think unmasking altogether sounds really good in theory, but it might not be really good in practice all the time. So, acceptance. Now, it's really easy for people to say, just be yourself. People will love you for who you are, right? But there are some lines there, right? So no one wants me to be blunt, especially in something that is, say, an emotionally charged conversation, right? So learning tact is a skill.
Yes, it is.
Right? And that might not be a natural way for you to speak. That doesn't mean that it is not important.
That is a good point to bring up. And I think this is a situation where both neurotypical and neurodivergent people need to practice. Both equally.
No one wants to hear the truth all the time. And as an autistic person, I like the truth and I like facts and I like information. Nobody wants it, not all the time. Right? Sometimes it is better to say nothing.
A little white lie approach? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying sometimes it's better to say nothing.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Also, yes, little white lies make the world go round.
Okay.
They do. So you have to learn a balance, is what I'm trying to say. So someone says to you, hey, does my ass look fat in these pants? They don't necessarily want
the truth.
It depends on the person who is asking that question and how well they know you. So most people who know me are not going to ask me that question unless they truly want an honest response.
Yep.
Okay. But I've also learned not to just say, yes, yep, that's what's happening there. I can also say, I don't think that that's the best cut for you. I think that this might be better, which is a bit gentler way of saying yes.
So you've learned how your masking has taught you to how to be a rather good diplomatic person.
Often, but not always. And I will often default to saying it in my head and not saying it out loud.
Okay. So that is a good strategy in which people can use. Okay.
But I have to say, sometimes it's really hard not to say things out loud.
To just blurt it out. Okay.
To just hold it in, because you want to share information. Not all information needs to be shared, and not everybody wants to hear it.
Okay.
Everybody has to filter themselves sometimes. Just because you're autistic doesn't mean you don't have to follow some of those societal rules, right? It is not necessary to hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
Right?
It doesn't give you the permission to have bad behavior.
Yes. Well, I like to say inappropriate behavior because I think bad sounds really bad.
Granted. Well put there, Kimberly.
Okay. Another benefit: to avoid social rejection, prejudice, bullying, and discrimination. Right? If you find yourself in a situation where you could be physically harmed, you may have to suppress your stimming or mask yourself. Right? Safety.
Yeah, safety comes first. Absolutely.
So that is a benefit. To be able to mask and to be able to hide that and keep yourself safe is sometimes really necessary. Sadly, necessary.
In society, yes, absolutely. It is.
To also increase your ability to find and keep a job.
That is a necessity of evil over there, right?
You have to be able to live. You have to be able to support yourself. And I know companies are trying to evolve, or at least on paper, where they have their inclusion and equity.
Yeah, there has been a lot more focus on equity. Granted, it's in the forefront of a lot of businesses and partnerships, but there still needs a lot more work to be put into it in order to make it.
I don't know how much of that is lip service, where they have this so that they can say that they have it, and how it is implemented may be two different things depending on the company. And I know that there are a lot of people out there. I was on a DSO webinar, and that's Disability Services Ontario, and they were talking about employment. And the people giving the webinar were neurotypical, and they were saying, well, someone cannot not hire you because you're autistic, and if you let them know you are, then they can put in accommodations for you. And there were hundreds of people on this webinar, and it was lit up, where people were saying, but then they won't hire you if you come out and say that you're autistic right out the gate, because they don't necessarily want to put in those accommodations for you right away. So you would have to mask to get the job. And then once you are in the job, depending on how that company works, you might be able to say, hey, I'm past my probation period. I need an accommodation for this. And then they have to provide it for you. But within that probation period, they can just fire you. They don't need to give you a reason.
Yeah. So that comes down to not just, workforces doing that. This has to come from a provincial and federal level on implementing those changes. Maybe by saying certain amount of people with certain, disabilities or exceptionalities need to be part of your workforce.
I mean, you can say that you need to. I think the best way to elicit change is to give people education. And if employers really understood what good workers autistic people are, they would be more inclined to hire them. But we don't do well in the interview process.
Because that's a social setting. right? It is a social setting.
And they're looking for a certain type of personality.
Yes.
Right. And if I can't make eye contact, they're like, oh, that person's not trustworthy, or they're lying to me, or all those things. And then you don't do well. Right. They're going to hire someone else who is better able to do all of those social things that make that person think, oh, yeah, I think this person's going to be a really good fit.
Yeah.
Right.
So the processes need to be examined a little bit more and, include processes that, give people with autism the opportunity to shine.
And I would really like to hear other people's thoughts and experiences surrounding masking. So you can leave us a comment or join us on our Facebook group, because I find this really interesting. And I think the more that we can share about this, the better it is. So consequences and benefits, it's sort of a cost-benefit analysis.
Okay.
Right? And it's a bit of a balancing act. And sometimes the benefit does outweigh the cost, because there is always a cost for masking.
There is. Sadly.
So the last thing I want to talk about is unmasking.
Okay.
Lots and lots of
Sounds
autistic
like-
people talk about unmasking. Go ahead.
Sounds like a lot of work for you.
It's, yeah. It's not always something you can just turn on and off, right? I can't physically take a mask off. Also, it's really scary. Right? You've built this thing. You've put all of this in place as a way of protecting yourself. And people are like, just stop doing it.
You're putting yourself into a vulnerable situation and you don't know how to process it cognitively, emotionally, physically. Oh, screams, overwhelming.
Masking works to help you through situations and to navigate relationships. Right? It's like your water wings when you're learning to swim, your training wheels on your bicycle, right? You never know for sure how someone is going to receive you if you unmask. You don't know, because you've built the relationship with this person while you were masking. And if you start taking those layers away, you're setting yourself up for this relationship to maybe not continue.
That is true. And I think that's true of all relationships and all scenarios. Like when let's take getting into a relationship with somebody, when you're dating somebody, we are, masking ourselves by putting our best self forward, right? So masking is a natural trait that everybody possesses. But when it comes to autism, there is masking of the autistic trait itself, which is a whole different ballgame. Right?
Yeah.
So unmasking in this case is unmasking of your, autistic self and not just of who you are as a person.
Yeah, I think there really needs to be a balance between when you mask and when you don't. And of course, that's going to be different for every person, just like autism is different for every person. If anyone is looking for more information about unmasking, I found a book by Devon Price, who is a social psychologist and an autistic author. His book, Unmasking Autism, Discovering the New Faces of Neurodiversity, has some strategies for unmasking, and I have not read it, but it has a lot of really, really good reviews. So that might be worth checking out.
And this is what we'd like to do. We like to, come up with a topic. We both explore the topic and we come up with information that we think is useful. And, we like to share in order to reduce the amount of, filtering that people have to do and to obtain certain amount of information.
Yeah, I think information should just be given.
Yeah, I agree.
Because unmasking is a process, I did find a lot of people who were saying that it leaves them wondering who they really are. And if you think that you are having mental health struggles, please reach out to a qualified medical professional like your family doctor.
Yeah. In this day and age, it's a process of getting to know who you are is a process. It's a lifelong process. So don't be hard on yourself. Right? Because we all at some stage in our life put on certain masks in order to, evolve into doing a certain aspect of, parenting or being in a relationship or working. So don't be hard on yourself. We all do it. It's just give yourself the permission to at least explore the possibility of who your authentic self is.
Yeah, and I think I started off really slow. I'm masking slowly at home, where it's safe, and I can just do that. And very slowly with certain individuals in my life that I feel will be really accepting of it. And I've talked to them about it and said, hey, this is a process that I'm going through, and I'm just trying it out. So if my behavior is a little different, that's why. That's what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, you've often chatted with me and saying, "Hey, sometimes I'm just going to be blunt," and and I'm like, and that's perfectly okay with me. I don't mind you being blunt. This is, to me, you're just giving me the facts, right? I don't take it personally, and I don't take it offensively.
But not everyone is able to do that.
And that also comes being in the employment that I'm in, right? So that, to me, that's the norm. I don't take offense to a lot of things. So I'm like, oh, thank you very much. Have a great day too.
It's true. Kids are not filtered.
No, they're not.
And autistic kids, less filtered.
Yes, I love it.
All right.
Anything else on your hit list?
No, I wanted to wrap it up by saying that hopefully with better understanding and societal acceptance of neurodiversity, masking will become less necessary.
And I think you threaded the needle beautifully when you said masking and how much of a cognitive load it is on people. And to me, you may, not have really, to me, it made a connection between masking and then resulting into meltdowns and burnouts and the correlation between the two. And I think that is a perfect topic for our next podcast.
It really is.
Yeah. So meltdowns, shutdowns, and burnouts, I think, are crucial to who people are when they come to masking and how it all kind of wraps up. So do you think that's a good one?
I think that's a great topic. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Until the next time.
We'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in. If you know someone who might find this episode helpful, feel free to share. Also, check out our website and socials linked in the description.